All right, today we're diving into one of the wildest financial stories ever told, The Big Short. We're talking about the 2008 crisis and how a handful of people, complete outsiders, saw a global economic meltdown coming when absolutely no one else did. The real question is, how on earth did they pull it off? Let's get into it. The film kicks off with this quote from Mark Twain, and honestly, it's the key to understanding everything that follows. See, the 2008 crash wasn't some random accident. Nope. It was caused by one single powerful idea. An idea that everyone in charge, the big banks, the government, believed was 100% true. The only problem? It was completely, totally wrong. So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How did they do it? This wasn't about some magic crystal ball or secret insider knowledge. It was about having the guts to do something so simple, so boring, really, that nobody else bothered. We're talking top bankers, government regulators, the whole shebang. These guys just read the fine print. That's it. That's the secret.
Okay, so to really get how the whole thing fell apart, we have to go back to the world before the crash. In the early 2000s, there was this one piece of conventional wisdom, like a universal truth, that basically powered the entire global economy.
And here it is, the big one. The idea that the U.S. housing market was rock solid, unbreakable. I mean, this was the bedrock of the entire financial world. Banks, investors, you name it, they all just assumed it was the safest place you could possibly put your money. Mortgages were like gold because, who doesn't pay their mortgage, right? Right? Well, while everyone was busy feeling all safe and secure, the banks, they got greedy. They started handing out millions and millions of these things, subprime mortgages. These are basically super risky loans given to people who, let's be honest, were probably going to have a tough time paying them back. It was like they were planting tiny little sticks of dynamite all throughout this unbreakable foundation. And this is where our first hero, or anti-hero depending on how you look at it, comes in. This is the guy who smelled the smoke while everyone else was just enjoying the party. Meet Dr. Michael Burry, a bit of an oddball, a hedge fund manager who did something truly radical. He decided to look. He didn't have any secret sources. He just had a healthy dose of skepticism. So he locked himself in his office and did the one thing no one on Wall Street wanted to do, the grunt work. He actually read through thousands upon thousands of these individual home loans and realized, wait a minute, this is all junk. So how did the banks get away with selling all this junk? Simple. They came up with this clever little product. They took thousands of those awful high-risk loans, bundled them all together into something called a mortgage-backed security, or MBS, and then slapped a safe label on it. It's like hiding a bunch of rotten apples in the middle of a giant crate and selling the whole thing as fresh. $1 billion. That's how much Burry wanted to bet against the housing market. He was so convinced this whole thing was a house of cards that he marched into the biggest banks on Wall Street and said, hey, create a new product for me so I can bet that your whole system is going to collapse. It's called a credit default swap. It's basically an insurance policy. And the banks? They laughed. They thought it was the easiest money they'd ever make. They took his bet in a heartbeat.
Okay, so Burry was crunching the numbers, looking at spreadsheets. But another group of guys, led by a man named Mark Baum, decided they needed to see what was happening on the ground. They wanted to see the fraud with their own eyes. So Baum's team flies down to Florida, and what they find is just mind-blowing. They find mortgage brokers openly bragging about giving loans to people with no income and no job. They literally called them ninja loans. And why would they do this? Simple. The big banks were paying them massive bonuses to sign up the absolute riskiest people they could find. The fraud wasn't some hidden thing. It was the system. And just when you think it can't get any more ridiculous, it does. The banks took those mortgage-backed securities, the bundles that were already filled with trash loans, and they bundled the bundles together. This new, even more complicated monster was called a Collateralized Debt Obligation, or CDO. Think of it like this. They took garbage, wrapped it in a fancy package, and then put that package inside an even fancier box to hide the smell. The movie brings in Chef Anthony Bourdain for maybe the best financial explanation ever. He says it's like a chef with old fish. He knows it's about to go bad, so what does he do? He throws it into a fish stew to hide the taste. That stew, that's the CDO. The banks knew they were selling spoiled goods, so they just cooked it into something so complex no one would notice. So we've got Burry with his numbers, and Baum with his on-the-ground proof. And then a third group of young, hungry investors accidentally stumbles onto the whole thing, and they uncover what might be the most terrifying secret of all. This is the question that blows the whole thing wide open. They start digging and realize something that just doesn't make any sense. How can the value of the bets against the houses be worth more than the houses themselves? It's like finding out that your neighbor's house is insured against fire for 100 times its actual value. It's not just insurance anymore, it's a powder keg. And this is how. The synthetic CDO. This is the real weapon of mass destruction in this story. Get this. These weren't bundles of actual loans, they were just bets on how the other bundles of loans would perform. It was literally a bet on a bet. And then there were bets on those bets. The result? The amount of money riding on the housing market's failure was exponentially larger than the value of the housing market itself. This is what took a simple housing bubble and turned it into a full-blown global catastrophe. Well, you can only pull one too many blocks from a Jenga tower before the whole thing comes crashing down. And that's exactly what happened. Reality finally kicked in. The whole system imploded. And the consequences, well, they were devastating, especially for regular people who had nothing to do with it. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at this. On the left, you've got U.S. home values in 2007, looking pretty solid. And on the right, that's not a dip. That is a cliff dive, an absolute free fall between 2008 and 2009. And remember, that line isn't just a number on a chart. That represents the life savings of millions of families, just gone, vanished. 8.4 million. That's how many jobs were lost in the U.S. alone because of this. 8.4 million people lost their livelihoods, all because of a bunch of bad bets made in fancy Wall Street offices. The ripple effect was just enormous.
So what's the big takeaway here? What's the core essence of this whole story? It's this. The most valuable thing you can do is question what everyone else takes for granted. Because the system, whether it's finance or something else, is designed to protect itself. It is not designed to protect you. The people who saw this coming were the ones brave enough to say, hey, wait a second, does this actually make any sense? And for me, the single most mind-blowing revelation from The Big Short is this right here. The fact that the bets on the bubble were worth so much more than the bubble itself. It wasn't the bad mortgages that almost destroyed the world economy. It was the massive, unregulated casino of side bets that Wall Street built on top of them. That's what turned a fire into an inferno. And if you think, well, at least we learned our lesson, I've got some bad news for you. The movie ends with this chilling little fact. After all that chaos, only one low-level guy went to jail. And by 2015, the big banks were back at it, selling the exact same kind of toxic garbage, just with a new, fancy-sounding name. The fish stew, my friends, is back on the menu.
Hey, if this breakdown helped you wrap your head around this crazy story, do me a huge favor and show some support. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to Summed Up HQ because we've got a lot more deep dives like this coming your way. And if you're ready to really own this knowledge, I highly recommend checking out the links in the description. You can grab a copy of the book this was all based on, or even start a free trial with Audible. Trust me, it's worth it. Remember our motto: click, learn, repeat. I'll see you in the next one.